Yo, what's up, guys? I'm back. Let's see, we on Reddit. So, what's the best music for sparring? I thought that was pretty interesting. I've been to reggae. I've been to reggae gyms, EDM gyms, hardcore gyms, metal gyms, modern rap gyms, '90s rap gyms. That's us at Iron Horse. If you guys know Tony, we got the '90s New York hip hop playing, and I feel like no one talks about it. What do y'all think? What do y'all listen to at your gym? When you roll, is there a preference for one genre over another? If you ever pick the music, what's your go-to playlist? Yeah, not everybody can be on that. Not everybody can get the aux cord. That's what they say. You can't be on the Bluetooth speaker. Let's see. First poster says, whatever music you choose, 80% of people on the mat will dislike it. That is true. Most people not gonna like your music, and that's why most gyms will stick to that one music genre. I had to cover morning classes for a few weeks for my main coach. When he got back, he told me, I heard a lot of great things about your classes. However, I also heard your music choices were very poor. Oh, dang. Yo, somebody didn't like him. That's what that was. Who Let the Dogs Out was on repeat the whole time you were gone, Professor. He said, I alternated it with The Roof is on Fire. Only 80%. I bet we can find something universally hated. Got to pump those numbers up. Yeah. I trained with some Dagestani and speakers blasting readings of Quran and prayers. Oh, well, that's legit right there. You know you're going to have a good training session. Creed. Creed's one of the best bands, right? Metal bands or alternative. Dude, my gym is owned by a Christian pastor and the playlist is filled with Christian rock. I mean, there's some good Christian rock out there too. This is actually hilarious. Nothing like choking your friend and singing, "Can you take me higher? Can you take me higher?" Dun, 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 dun. Yo, we gotta get Jeff on here. You guys know Jeff, he'd like to do some karaoke. Let's see. Gregorian chant. Random stuff. The Halo theme song. Some gyms should definitely host a jazz open mat. That would be pretty cool. Some jazz would be cool. Anything to give you guys some culture out there. I'm mad because my local gym's open mat overlaps with the Brazilian hour on my local jazz radio station and they don't play it. For real, I'm down with that. Forces you to think, breathe, relax. Changes from the I don't know about metal, so here's some Metallica. Metallica's good. Masters of Puppets or Puppet. Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite coaches at my gym, great guy, terrific instructor, but he has an unfortunate fondness for 21 Pilots. Nobody is perfect. Yeah, nobody's gonna like your music. I'm just kind of some of the stuff I can't read. Brazilian funk. I think your passing gets 10% better when they put on the Brazilian funk. Valet funk. Do Brazilians actually roll to funk? Most roll to Brazilian rap from my experience. Funk is for shaking that thing and not rolling. Brazilian here, mostly old school Brazilian funk like MC Marcinho or something like that, but you are right, rap is more common. Okay, so rap seems to be the most popular thing. The only thing with rap is that if you got kids in class or more conservative people, some of the lyrics, I made this mistake in Alabama. Had the kids training, had some rap or something on. I was like, uh-oh. So you got to be careful with some of the lyrics. And even when you try to find the non-explicit lyrics, and you're using whatever app, your Spotify or YouTube Music, some of those lyrics gonna get, they're gonna slide in. Yeah, Wu-Tang. Oh yeah, Wu-Tang is good. I like Iron Horse because we got the '90s hip hop, bro. You come in, you're in that time warp. You're in that, like we never moved out of the '90s, and I love it. Metallica, Run the Jewels, Taylor Swift. Oh, Jesus Christ, Taylor Swift. Shout out to Wendy. She's a Taylor Swiftie fan. I guess Fionn is too. Ooh, Soundgarden's good. I mean, you can't go wrong. Naruto soundtrack, you know, for my anime bros. I mean, whatever just allows you to focus on rolling. You know, that's what we want as the coach. And realistically, we don't want you guys going crazy and like rah, just raging out. Rage Against the Machine is a good group too. But we don't want you guys raging out. We want you guys relaxed, flowing, and enjoying yourselves. So let's look at our first video for today. We got Keenan. He says, why do some BJJ gyms become cultish and weird? A lot of gyms like that out here, man. I don't know. It's an epidemic. So we're going to get started. All right, Keenan, what you got for us, bro?
How to modernize JJ by not treating it like a cult and giving people the freedom to train freely. Little redundant there. However, he has a good point. And I think what this question is really asking is, how do you build a healthy culture in a gym? How do you avoid cult-like mentalities, tribalism from manifesting? The simple answer is to create a flat hierarchy, which means try and have multiple instructors where no one instructor is like, you know, top dog. That's really the problem, is if you put one guy at the top of the pyramid, especially if that pyramid is oriented around like jiu-jitsu technique and teaching. It's different if it's like the owner and he's like separate from the teaching and it's like his word is law because he owns the place. That is still important and you need that kind of leadership. But when you have a guy who's like interacting with the clientele and he becomes the person that everyone goes to for answers, this is where it becomes a slippery slope, because the more people that go to this one guy for answers, the bigger his ego gets. And maybe he's a super cool dude, but no matter who you are, if you have a lot of people starting to come to you for answers and you are able to give those answers, it's going to elevate your perception of yourself. And it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's sort of like a recursive feedback loop where they get the attention, they deploy the answers, or they deploy some value to those people, they get more attention, so on and so forth, until everyone is looking at this guy like he's God or he's like the fucking man. And that's really the danger. And that's where the cult-like mentality comes. It comes from a single guy where it's a cult of personality, people really like this guy, and then he starts taking advantage of his power. And you've heard the saying, oh, it's just absolute power corrupts absolutely. When you have power, it is almost impossible to not leverage the power, because power is equivalent to status. It's equivalent to your self-worth. It's equivalent to your identity. And if you don't know how to wield power and you've been put into a position where you're good at jiu-jitsu and you're somehow a teacher or a head instructor at a gym and all these people worship you suddenly, it's almost unavoidable that power is going to be taken advantage of someday. Usually if it's a male instructor, and most instructors are male, they eventually start dating the students, and they get attention from one of the girls, and the girl sees that everyone else goes to this guy for answers, so he's the top dog, and psychologically men and women are just like, that's how they interact. You can't really avoid. There are women in jiu-jitsu who, when there's less females in an academy, they tend to get more male attention, so they have a lot of attention, and then there's one guy who's like the man. Like none of the other guys are providing the same amount of value to her as that one guy. So it's just easy target for the dude to kind of swoop in and take advantage of that situation, take advantage of that power imbalance. So the way that I have solved that is to not have a head honcho. All the instructors are coaches. Their job is to teach you jiu-jitsu. Their job is not to teach you about life. It's not to teach you about relationships. It's not to coddle your psyche or your issues in your personal life. This is a service-based business where we are providing a service in exchange for money. That is very critical. It's not a family. We aren't all best friends. That's stupid, and it just creates social and personal strife. Now, a lot of people don't want to hear that because their jiu-jitsu gym becomes their social circle and their dating pool. The reality is, if you take advantage of that, it will quickly become not your business, and your business will fail, and it will become some dramatic interpersonal issues galore where you're coming into your gym and everyone knows your dirty laundry and you banged that chick and you banged another chick and then she doesn't like you anymore, so then she goes and talks shit about you to everyone, and then you kick her out, and then everyone knows you banged that chick, and then you do it again.
Probably seen it.
Like, it just goes on and on and on until you're ruined. And it's happened at so many gyms, it's comical. But it's not talked about. But I've seen it happen at so many gyms. So when I opened my gym, I was like, I know that this is not the way to do it. So I am not the primary instructor. I actually teach the least of most of my instructors. And of my instructors, if I see that one instructor is like becoming that guy, I will have him teach less. And I'll put more people in, and I'll increase the rotation and change up the classes so that if everyone goes to one guy's class, I'll make sure that that class time has a different instructor each time. So it just is impossible for one person to start to garner all this attention and this power, which has cascading problems because eventually maybe there's a falling out. You don't want to work with that guy anymore, and then he tries to take all your students to some gym down the road that hired him, or maybe tries to start his own gym not with you. So in general, it's just good to like balance the power. It's kind of like the American system. Like it's the balance of powers. There's different. There's the judicial, the legislative, and the executive
still got
branch,
all that
right?
stuff?
Like that's how your gym should be. It should be like
working?
the administrative, the instructors, and then the marketers, and like they all kind of have power. And then the guy who owns the equity is the one who gets to clearly define the goals and the mission, and then we all need to orient around that goal and mission. And of course, the goal and mission is never going to be, this is my kingdom, and all of you have to do exactly what I say, and I want to make this place coddle my ego and make me feel really good about myself. Like, it would be asinine and arrogant and stupid. So that's how you avoid the cult mentality. Focus on the service. Focus on the product. Focus on the clients. Don't focus on yourself. It's not about you. It really isn't. I know everything's about you because you're living the POV of your life, but to kind of zoom out from that, be observational of your surroundings, and decide that I'm going to make this a business that serves the needs of my clientele. That is really the mindset you need. And you are focused on value, you're focused on providing value to those people, and it is not your job to be their best friends. And you shouldn't be their best friends.
You don't want to be your best friend.
I
don't want to be your best friend.
With an exchange of money for services. And if you keep that ideal, you can avoid the cult-like mentality. But ultimately, culture is top-down, so the guy who has the most power has to make this conscious decision to give up that power and to set it aside and say, I don't need this because it doesn't actually serve my purposes of having a successful gym. And that's the way to do it. It really is, it's that simple. Someone at the top has to decide that there is not going to be a concentration of power. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that.
Awesome. I agree with a lot of what Keenan was saying.
Avoid the cult mentality.
There are a lot of cultish and weird gyms out there, and it seems like it's only increasing. But that really makes the good gyms really stand out, and you can just see that with the people. The people in the vibe. You go there, you're gonna enjoy yourself. You're not gonna feel pressured. Yeah, that's basically it. You're gonna enjoy yourself, man. It's gonna be like, man, I can't wait to show up at that gym, and people are gonna not only gonna say great things, but you're gonna cultivate a good community at your gym. And I like what Keenan said of making sure there's different instructors. If one class gets really popular, or if one instructor gets really popular. Some instructors will get popular, take like a Danaher or a Guy Mendez. Like they're good. They're the best in the world. So they're going to, of course, people are going to gravitate to those people. But in his case, I understand for the business, it works better if the gym as a whole is attracting the people and not just one singular person that can move on to a different place. If Danaher moves to California, there goes Gordon and the core of their new wave team, right? Okay, and then the school they're at now in Texas, people forget about it. Or the Henzo gym, the Blue Basement. I'm sure there were people that stopped going there once they lost those guys. So instead of being so dependent on one person, your business needs to have a good business model and have several instructors that can fill those gaps. That makes sense for having a good business. And just not a cult. That's all I want. Not a cult, guys. But it's hard when people want to have a cult. So back to Reddit, it says, entering my 3rd year in BJJ and I still suck, and I'm still a white belt. Some of that's normal. Let's read farther. Okay, let's see what else he got to say. So I didn't want to end up in the 90% of white belts. It looks like you are, bro, who quit. So I've been keeping at it, but I do feel like I'm not making progress. I took about 3 months off, and everybody at the gym is stronger and better than me. So a lot of this sounds mental. I used to have good cardio. Well, that's physical when I rolled, but that's been thrown out the window. It doesn't take long to lose your cardio, bro. I took some time out because playing soccer messed up my knees and ankle. I don't even say that I do BJJ to my friends because I feel like I don't know anything. You're a white belt. Basically, I feel like I have learned nothing. I get submitted left and right, and I can't hang with the rest of the class when I roll. Of course, you're a white belt. he's very self depreciating. He's kind of defeating himself before anything else. But I have no plans to give up, and I'm headed in the right trajectory. Or am I headed in the right trajectory? Or am I sort of underperforming? Also, I feel like I won't get a blue belt I won't get a blue belt for another 2 years. Life sucks. I have been training 2 to 3 times each week consistently, even when I'm on vacation. The only time I took time off was when I got injured from soccer and wrestling for a few weeks. Training no gi, and my school has too many strong and good practitioners, and I definitely should be the lowest in the pecking order. All right, so let's, I like to hold my 2 cents for a little bit. So let's read some comments. I know it's hard not to see hard work rewarded, but the best years of BJJ for me were when I was a white belt. Nothing to prove, all to learn, and nothing to lose. Yeah, you should be losing at white belt and enjoying that. Nobody cares if you tap out as a white belt. He says, yeah, I guess I don't have the pressure of being a new blue belt. Blue belt is when the higher ranks take the gloves off. Yeah. So he's getting his butt kicked, but the gloves are still on. And then when we pull the gloves off, that means, okay, we're going for real once you get that blue belt. Purples and browns were nice to me as a white belt. Suddenly started to trash me on every roll as soon as I got promoted. I don't know if that's something to worry about or to feel flattered. Nah, it's just normal. I watched someone get promoted after a fundamentals class to blue belt and then get ripped apart by everybody in the gym during open mat. It's literally 2 minutes of celebration. Yep, that's it. That's all we can afford. We'll allow you 2 minutes to celebrate that blue belt. When I got promoted to blue belt, 2 white belts beat the F out of me right after. Yes, white belts. I never felt so demoralized and unworthy. Then COVID hit right after, and I didn't go for a while during shutdowns. Joined a new gym, and everyone beat the snot out of me. You see, I gotta self edit over here, over and over again because I was the new guy in a blue belt. I only got promoted in mid-December, and one of the brown belts wrist locked me twice this morning. Yeah, well, he was holding back that whole time. Granted, he likes wrist locks. He likes to wrist lock everyone, but still. We have an autistic brown belt who was obsessed with wrist locks for a while. Just so happened to be the time I started BJJ for the first time. My wrists were jacked for a while. Autism plus wrist locks. Holy crap! That's a freaking nightmare. Just add some acai into the mix, and you have the best base for BJJ future world champ. Oh my god. You can join our advanced class as a 3-stripe white belt, so I was familiar with the environment. I couldn't believe how much I got my butt kicked when I showed up as a blue belt, like the worst I ever been thrashed. It's so humbling. So everybody on Reddit is getting their butt kicked at white belt. It's normal. I don't know what else to say. 3 times a week. He might need to put more work into his practice, so maybe taking private lessons or watching some YouTube, or there's tons of quality programs online programs. You have Submeta, AOJ online. Lucas Lepre has his own online platform. You just got to put more work in it. If you think just showing up to class 3 times a week and you're not thinking about jiu-jitsu outside of class, and you think you're going to improve that way, it's not possible, bro. And I mean, he should be getting his butt kicked. If he was a white belt and he wasn't getting his butt kicked, I would be kind of questioning the gym a little bit. Like, well, what kind of gym are you training at? And also, a lot of it seems mental. It seems like he's defeating himself before even really trying. Um, One guy says the upper belts. We said wait till you hit purple belt. The upper belts somehow shift to a higher gear. It's really frustrating when you think you might be catching up, and then all of a sudden you realize they were still holding back after smashing you for years. Yeah, people always holding back. So it's kind of crazy. You're like, I'm struggling, I'm getting tapped out, and they're going easy on you. So take this opportunity to learn. Take it as an opportunity to learn and to grow. And don't rush that blue belt. I mean, obviously you're not ready for it. You ain't got the skills. Yeah. Let's see. That's why I change gyms as soon as I get promoted to blue. Can start fresh each time. Nothing to lose. That's a joke, guys. A turning point for me was when I realized you need to develop a game that you concentrate on. Trying to absorb and apply all the moves all the time will make you feel like you're going nowhere. You do need to, well, don't specialize at white belt. Don't specialize at blue belt. Purple belt is when you want to start specializing, unless you have a great understanding of the game already. You should experience a lot. White belt, you're just survival. That's the name of your game. Survival. Learn your defense. Learn how to escape mount, escape the back. Learn how to shrimp, retain your guard. I mean, if you could do that at white belt, you're doing well. I feel that as a white belt 1.5 years into the sport, I have no idea what game I should focus on because you're still a white belt. There are only a few submissions I can properly avoid versus blue and purples, so that's not bad. Yeah, you're in the right place. Versus other white belts or fresh blue belts, I just take whatever I can catch them with. Of course, I have preferences, but how the heck should I know what I'm good at? Whatever you do consistently is what you're good at. So you might need someone to observe you rolling, specifically you rolling to give you feedback. Everybody does something well, or at least they do something not terrible. I don't have obvious features like long legs or arms, or I'm not particularly strong. I just kind of try to do everything, and sometimes it clicks, but sometimes it doesn't. So that might be your skill right there. Your ability to try different things, and stick with it. Some people don't have that, that perseverance to try different techniques. Some people can only do the same thing over and over again. Another guy says, I'm just a blue belt, so people here can feel free to correct me, but in essence, choose a submission, escape, sweep for certain situations and try to master that single technique. So when you end up in, say, half guard, you flow right into the predetermined technique without deliberation. One thing that gets people a hard time in jiu-jitsu is that you have so much freedom of movement, which, I mean, it attracts a lot of people. It's not very structured. Like, you're not doing a kata. You get to flow through different techniques and moves against different partners. And the rule set is, unlike judo, I'm not calling out my judo bros, but you have judo rules are a lot more, there are a lot more limitations, but in jiu-jitsu, you can pretty much do whatever you want. So I always liken it to improv, in acting, improv, or even music. You create and do what you want, but sometimes that freedom of choice is overwhelming. So that's what a lot of people have trouble with. So that makes me think of ecological, because ecological and positional sparring gives you constraints. So once you have constraints, usually your coach is the one that gives you the constraints. So maybe you should be talking to your coach and not the people online. But that's crazy talk, right? So usually your coach will tell you, okay, you're working close guard, you're working your passing, you're working your armbar from close guard, you're working your escapes from mount. So usually the higher belts and the coach give you more direction, and that's kind of what you should lean into. And again, if you don't have a good coach like that, you don't have access to higher belts, there are resources online that you can check out. So I think a lot of his thing, well, he's also 3 years in. So you definitely need to change something. Something needs to change. I think you might need to study more, take private lessons. I don't know if he said he did gi or no gi. Let's see. You might need to put the gi on. Maybe that's going to give you more structure versus training no gi. So, I mean, there's a ton of different things you can do. Go talk to your coach. That's my first line of advice. So let's get to another video. We got Chew Jitsu, one of your guys' favorite online personalities, and it says wrestling culture versus BJJ culture. So Chew, please don't hit me with a copyright strike. Just reviewing, reaction video.
All right, guys, so we're going to talk about wrestling culture versus jiu-jitsu culture, just some ideas to chew on from guys who have both competed in wrestling, been in wrestling, and also obviously done jiu-jitsu. Obviously, he's done a lot more wrestling than I have. I've done a lot more jiu-jitsu than he has, but again, we've both been around both sports, and so I figured it'd be fun to just chat about these different ideas for some of you guys who maybe if you're getting into jiu-jitsu from wrestling, or maybe if you're a jiu-jitsu guy and you don't know about some of the stuff that happens in wrestling, but you're curious, maybe this could be interesting to you. So let's talk about some comparisons from wrestling to jiu-jitsu.
So in wrestling, everyone's a competitor. No matter if you're a crappy competitor or a good competitor in wrestling, you don't have a choice, right? At least in the American system. I can't speak for other places, but you start wrestling, immediately you have a season. It's about 3 to 4 months, and you are going to compete. You're probably going to get 20 to 50 matches. I know that's a high range, but it's going to happen, and you're going to do that at least for 4 years if you stick with it in high school. Whereas in jiu-jitsu, you sign up, you're a 45-year-old man with 3 kids and a mortgage. You don't have time to compete, and maybe competing is just not worth the risk for you.
Yeah, and you get I think like the difference for me is like when you think of wrestling is because for instance, wrestling is a martial art. It's a fighting style of sorts. Because I remember in high school learning how, like, if I double leg someone like off the ground onto hard surfaces, like that's it. There is no more fight. Like they don't want to fight because they know what you're doing. But we don't think about it necessarily as a fight. We think of it as a sport.
Yeah, it's funny that point you brought up. Sorry to interrupt you, but I'm like, in jiu-jitsu, I'm like, jiu-jitsu is a martial art. And my whole time wrestling, this is another big difference. Culturally, I never thought about it as a martial art. I just was like, this is a sport. But I know it's random, but when you said that, it made me think of it. Like, in wrestling, we don't think, it's not like this, I'm doing this for self-defense and for da-da-da-da-da. We're just like, I'm just wrestling. I got to meet this weekend, whatever, with my boys. I'm having fun.
But then everybody's seen, a YouTube video of some dude who's a wrestler getting into a fight, and he just blasts double leg some dude and just crunches the dude into a floor, and like that's it. Or, you look at like the UFC, look at like the best fighters, the guys that are winning. Many of them have wrestling backgrounds, right? It's a part of fighting. It's a martial art. We just don't look at it that way. And we talked about this before. Folk style wrestling is a uniquely American thing. It's kind of like it's an American martial art, right? Like that's us. It's our thing that we have. And so you have this martial art, this sport, but it's looked at as a sport. But it's strictly for most of the time competition. Everybody gets into it. You're thinking about competition. You're going to compete, and like you said, whether you like it or not, you're going to compete. Your team's competing. Your coach, even if you're a JV guy, they're going to stuff you in somewhere to get a match in. You're going to compete. Whereas in jiu-jitsu, it's become more of like a lifestyle thing, right? So some people get into it for self-defense. Some people get into it for sports. Some people get into it because it becomes like a fitness thing for them, or social camaraderie and things like that. I mean, it hits a lot of these different boxes that like wrestling also hits. But like, for instance, like in wrestling, you develop this like strong camaraderie with your team, but you don't get into it for that reason necessarily, right? You're like, I'm coming into this for the sport, whereas people come into jiu-jitsu and they stick around for it for a big reason. It's more of like a lifestyle element that like hits a lot of boxes for people, where with wrestling typically you compete, or even if you're older and you're kind of out of competing, you're there to support the people that are getting ready to compete.
Right.
If you have like a club team or something like that.
Yeah, you're never just not compete. Like if you're a coach, you're competing as a coach. If you're like a kid, you're competing as a kid. So like no matter what your role is, there's always a level of competition. Whereas in jiu-jitsu, you could be a jiu-jitsu instructor.
Yeah, so that's a big debate there. In wrestling, everybody competes, and in jiu-jitsu, everybody wants to avoid competing, especially my Reddit people. They don't want to compete and then complain about being a white belt for 3 years. Yeah, I mean, you see it with wrestlers, like they're put in uncomfortable positions. They're forced to lose weight, cut weight. They have to compete a lot. So that builds resiliency, that builds that toughness. And some jiu-jitsu schools are run like that. You think of your top competitor schools, AOJ, Atos, I'm sure there's other gyms. Some alliance gyms somewhere, There's some tough gyms. So you're kind of pushed into competing before you can even think about it. A couple months in, they're like signing you up for whatever little local tournament. And it's just something you got to get over with, It's just you got to get in there and then let the nerves hit you and you survive. Maybe you do well. Maybe you get tapped out. It's okay. But those gyms tend to do a lot better. But on the flip side, you have like more, you have gyms that don't compete. And then you have gyms that strictly do self-defense so that they also don't have to compete. And that builds like a false sense of security. I think I've talked about that before. False sense of security where they think they can protect themselves. They think they will be able to act under pressure, react under pressure. But they won't even go to a tournament where they can simulate, okay, you're going to fight a guy your age, your experience, your belt level. Okay, let's see how you do. Instead, they're always prepping for these imaginary scenarios. Okay, you grab the gun. Okay, I got stabbed or shot, Things you can't really practice live too often or never. So, yeah, the culture, I think wrestling culture is better than jiu-jitsu culture because it's not about the business. It's about the sport. And then as they get older, it's about giving back and it's about building stronger youth. It's about putting those youth in those tough positions and growing versus jiu-jitsu culture is about money. Most places it's about money.
A jiu-jitsu coach,
right?
They're not necessarily the same thing. Like I've talked about this before. It's like there's such a huge disconnect to me about what it actually means to be a coach versus what it means to be an instructor. And lots of jiu-jitsu gyms have instructors and not coaches. Not that this is bad or good.
No. Right. You're just saying as a point, and that's it's a good distinction because like you can think, well, you can teach a technique. But can you coach someone?
Right.
Those are different things, right? That's like because people can instruct a technique. I don't know if this is what you're talking about, but you can teach someone a technique.
100%.
But like coaching someone and getting the most out of that person.
100%.
And helping them like realize their potential. That's a different ball game.
Yeah, because like me or you could sell someone an instructional, or you guys buy an instructional, which I love. Thank you. But I've had people say "thank you, coach" to me, and I'm like, it's weird to me because it's all about language, right? But I'm like, I'm not your coach. Thank you for getting by this. I'm helping you. I'm an instructor to you.
Right, but you are part of their coach because maybe you say, because they may watch one of your videos because this is something I think about.
Yeah.
I do a lot of the videos that I do, and again, I talk about, there's technique videos on this channel, obviously, but I also do a lot of videos where obviously I'm talking about mindset and like different ideas. And so I'm trying to, a lot of times like when I do these videos, like you guys will notice, I'm not trying to sell you on some idea. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to get you to think a little differently. Yeah. I'm trying to get you to think in a certain way. And to me, like that's part of being a coach is like, I'm trying to get you to think a certain way. So for instance, like if I got a guy who doesn't believe in himself, then my job is to pull that out of him to make him believe in himself and show him what he's capable of. So you may not be their coach, but there may be something you said or something you did that made you all of a sudden you're like, you have become like an internet coach of sorts, right? Like, I mean, think about all the people that you've studied from afar, like different Jocko or whomever, right? Like, and think about the impact they've laid on you that maybe they weren't your coach per se, but of sorts they were, like I think about that. They were a mentor from afar.
Right. I guess I always just look at it as like, who's the guy that's there when you're in the back in the locker room crying? Mm-hmm. That to me, that's your coach. That's it.
I didn't mean to cut him off, and it's such a great point. But yeah, coach, I mean, you never know how your words, your actions will impact people, So even Chew Jitsu, I have a friend also called Chew Jitsu as well, CHUE Chew. So even him, not my friend, but the YouTube guy Chew. You never know how his words have helped people. Maybe someone was struggling. One of the Reddit people were struggling. Then they watched his video, and that might have motivated them to keep training. Or maybe somebody wanted to give up, and they hit a YouTube video or watched one of the Instagram videos, and they were like, you know what? I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna keep doing this. So you never know. Just like things you say, things you say in passing. Could be something you said in passing in the bathroom, at the gym, sitting down, that motivates someone and influences someone. And I'm just saying, I'm talking about people that already train, but think about people that don't train. They watch a video. They might watch this video and they're like, man, you know what? I want to give that a shot. So you got to take that influence, think about that influence you have and try to use it positively. So in the Keenan video, he talked about the cult personality and weird gyms. So that's like the dark side of that influence going to someone's head, and they're using that to manipulate people and control people. And so that's what we don't want to have. I'm against all that BS. Can't curse on here.
Agreeing or disagreeing, it's a discussion. But for me, a coach is the guy where you just won something big. They're celebrating with you. You're crying because you just lost something. They're the ones in the locker room like being like, hey, dude, it's good. We're going to get back to work. Mm-hmm. So it's like there's always that disconnect, because I've had this conversation a lot with friends where there's so many jiu-jitsu instructors, but they're not there at tournaments with the kids. They're not doing comp.
So that I could explain that a little bit, so depending on your coach and instructor, so instructors teaching the classes, they're with you at the gym. The coach can also be with you at the gym, but they're also at the tournament. So it can be hard for, say it's a solo instructor to coach at the gym. Say you got a gym, the tournament's 30 miles away, let's say 100 miles away. Hey, even 50 miles. Hey, 30 miles. Let's say 30 miles. 30 miles away, but they got to close the school to go coach one person. That's kind of rough. Or there's 5 people. Okay, one coach, he's running around. That happened to me. I was coaching Jeff. Turn to look over to my other side, my right side. Evan, my buddy Evans, he's going up. I'm like, oh no, Evan. So I missed half the match. So it's hard to be a coach. Especially when you have multiple athletes, multiple students, you're running around, my voice is gone after two matches, my voice is gone, and then you're trying to help, your students, your athletes, and, you're only a person, so it can be tough, in wrestling to have a team. Yeah, it's not the biggest team usually, right? Competing dual meets or whatever. But when you get to jiu-jitsu, it's like you might have a whole school. You got 50 people going to the tournament, 100 people going to the tournament. You're not going to get everybody. You won't be able to personally coach 100 people. So hopefully, some of the coaches, your coach doesn't have to be your instructor. It could be your friend, could be your wife, your girlfriend. She's your coach. Kill him, honey. That could be her. It could be someone just telling you the time. It could be someone giving you detailed instruction. It could be someone just watching your match for you, giving you feedback later on, or just someone filming for you. They got the phone, they're filming for you. So yeah, the coach is a gray area for me, because there's different ways to coach. There's different levels of coaching, and it's not always possible. Coach that usually that coaching is pro bono. You out there out of goodwill. Let me go out there to the coach. Let me go out there to coach. I'll drive all the way out to the tournament. I'll spend my gas back and forth and go coach you for your little white belt division. Every division is important, but yeah, it can be tough on the coaches. They got they're teaching their classes and then they got to go drive out to the tournament. It can be a little rough, guys. So just have understanding
with the kids. They're not, giving them mat advice about, hey, when you're in a competition, this is what we're thinking about. Like, this is mat strat. Like, one of the biggest things that Coach Ruff did for me, my college wrestling coach would be like, you're a smaller heavyweight. We need to learn how to play the edge really well.
College coaches get paid a lot.
They're going to get you on the edge and they're trying to push into you. He never taught me, he barely taught me techniques in the 4 years of college coaching. Like, he taught me
you gotta go to college with the technique.
So for me, a coach is a guy who is helping you in ways outside of like just purely technique, and they're helping you as it relates to competition. So I don't know that you can be I don't know that someone can be a coach if they're not helping you with competition.
Sure.
But that's literally all words are made up.
No,
so
of course.
It's a discussion.
But I think there's something to that, right? Like, as a coach, like, for instance, when it comes to competition, it's not always the most technical or the most knowledgeable, whatever that wins. It's the person that typically knows how to make their game work to the best of their abilities within like sort of a strategic sort of way, right? So like you look at a lot of jiu-jitsu guys, there's a lot of jiu-jitsu guys out there that are like decent, like they're very good, right? But they win because of the way they use their game strategically. They play really good strategy. You see this from wrestlers too. They use really good strategy, and so you can take someone who's got a great game or a good game, and you can make them a great competitor because you give them really good strategy. And they know how to play the rules. They know how to play to their strengths. You know, and they're in and avoid their weaknesses really well. So I've seen that plenty of times.
Cool. The next thing, I guess we can move on to the next.
I mean, also great coaching can, that might be the difference, you know, if you got Guy Mendez in your corner and then Joe Schmo black belt on the other corner, you know, Guy has a ton of experience. He won worlds before. He helped coach his brother to win worlds, coached several students to win worlds. So they know the high pressure environment. They've been where you want to go. You know, technically they know just about everything. They've seen everything. So the coach can make the difference when both athletes are equal. You know, that coach might be the separating factor. So you never know. And that's why some people will move to different academies. You know, people would move to AOJ. They would move to, you know, to Texas to go with Danaher. They'll move to New York to train with JT, you know. So that's why a lot of those people, those high-level athletes, if you notice, a lot of times athletes will start switching teams. Usually there's like better opportunities or there might be more money. But usually it's the coaching, usually better coaching environment.
Point is that in jiu-jitsu, the biggest culture shock I had in jiu-jitsu is that I could come in here and I could roll with like a 130-pound woman.
Oh, yeah.
In wrestling, I would not be allowed to roll with Chewy. Like, my coach was so particular about who I would train with. It'd be like, okay, Brandon, you're 238 pounds. Like, you need to only be training with the heavyweights or the true 197s. If Chewy was in college, you would have been a 184 pounder.
Yeah, I would have been a small,
Right? So it would have been like, you need to wrestle only with the guys that are like naturally 215, 220 who are cutting to 97, or only the heavyweights. Because of the level of intensity in wrestling, size matters. Like, size matters in jiu-jitsu. We've talked about this. But in wrestling, size matters. Like, it absolutely matters. Like, it's undeniable that size matters. So it was crazy to me, and I love it. One of my favorite parts of jiu-jitsu is that I can train with my girlfriend, who's really small. I can train with you. I can train with literally, name the person. I could train with a 400-pound person, which is cool. I could train with a 110-pound person.
It's funny because that's the Japanese model. You know, Japan's been doing really well, freestyle wrestling, but they train every body type just about. I don't know about this guy training with a 130-pound girl, but I guess, you know, if he can do it technically, you know, there shouldn't be any problems. But yeah, you should get experience with different body types. Everybody's going to be moving differently. They might be fast, might be slower, might be stronger, more flexible. So that's just more information that you can draw from in your matches.
Which is great. I think there's a lot of positives to that, but more than anything, it's not a good or bad. It's just like it was a shock to me. And I think it's cool that there's so much variability in your training partners in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, I was talking to, there was a guy who was here last year who was like a good judo player, and he said the same thing. Like, they weren't allowed to like mix it up with people outside of their weight class more than maybe a one weight class difference.
Yeah.
And you know, a big part of it too is with takedowns. Like, takedowns, like, it's a big deal, right? Like, any of you guys have ever like done takedowns in your gym and you've got up against some big guy or whatever, it's not fun having, you know, a person who weighs 50, 60, 70 pounds more than you slamming you into the ground, right? That's pretty rough. On the ground, it's a little bit more reasonable. And then also, too, with wrestling, it's just there's a higher premium that's given to athleticism, speed, strength, all those things. Whereas jiu-jitsu, you know, in the gi, you can negate a little bit. In no-gi, sometimes you can negate some of it. I think overall, I think it's a good thing that we can mix it up and play. One of the things, though, that I think people have to be really careful about with this in jiu-jitsu is we are sold, or at least we used to be, it's not so much now, but like we were sold this myth of jiu-jitsu that like technique conquers everything. And so I've had so many people that are like 130 pounds, you know, and they're like 40 years old, and then they're rolling with a 220 pound
that sounds like my friend Chew,
who's like, you know, in great shape, whatever.
Chew, he talked about you, bro.
With them. And they're like, God, I suck. And I'm like, what do you mean you suck? They're like, you know, my technique, I'm a brown belt. I should be able to beat this person. I'm like, like, hold on a second. Like, athleticism, speed, strength, youth matters. Those are big deals, right? You think about even the youth part of it. If you think about your heart rate, your engine, just you may be a great driver, but the engine in your car just doesn't have the same horsepower anymore, right? So you'll be in those situations, and I think sometimes people can be discouraged because they go up against someone that's much larger than them and they struggle. So what I tell people to do is, like, when I talk to someone and ask that question, like, how do you do with people of the same sort of age and same sort of weight and sex? Like, so if you're like a woman and you're 130 pound, how do you do with other 130 pound women? If you're a, like 150 pound dude, how do you do with other 150 pound dudes? Not comparing yourself to big giant monsters in your gym that maybe aren't as technically sound as you, but like size and strength really matter. And sometimes jiu-jitsu people can get away from that.
Yeah. The last point that
They gotta say that they kind of
in wrestling,
heads.
it's a much more cardio-based sport. Now, cardio matters in jiu-jitsu. I do a lot of assault bike stuff. I think you do too. We have the same strength and conditioning coach, so I would assume we do very similar things. But in wrestling, I find that you will undoubtedly run into issues where if you have bad cardio, you're either going to struggle with people that you shouldn't, or you're going to lose matches that you shouldn't necessarily. Whereas in jiu-jitsu, if you're just so much better than the guy, let's look at like Gordon Ryan 2019 ADCC. He 4 out of 5 matches submissions, and they were all quick. They were like all a minute and a half to 3 minutes. In the finals against Nicky Ryan. Nicky Ryan has much better cardio than Gordon, guarantee it. But did it matter? No, not really. Whereas in wrestling, you go to the NCAA championships, every single match, everyone's going to be in peak prime shape. You can't leg lock the guy, so you can't just submit him and finish the match. You could maybe pin him, but that's really freaking hard to do. You might get lucky and be like one of the guys who's just amazing at pinning, but if you actually look at the stats, there's very few guys who pin their way through a national tournament.
Very few.
So the reality of it in wrestling, it's like physical attributes matter a lot more, which is why there's less people having success that are older in wrestling. There are some, but those guys are usually on some EPOs.
Greco is a little bit different.
But for the most part, in jiu-jitsu, you can have a lot more longevity.
Freestyle, though.
Even if, in my opinion, even if you're a natural athlete, you can have longevity as in competing in masters, et cetera, not judging if you use anything. But in wrestling, even if you're using stuff, at some point, there's just no chance. If you're 45 years old, you're not going to the world championship finals.
No.
Greco.
Like, no matter
Greco's
what
different.
you're on, you're not making it to
Greco
the finals
different.
of worlds.
Yeah, it's just there's a difference. Like, just youth create any guy that's gotten older. You just understand, like, there's something different about youth. You can't quite put your finger on it, but like it's just different, and you're not going to be able to do that. Jiu-jitsu offers us some other abilities. You can slow things down. You can have people be more at a higher level in jiu-jitsu for longer. At least for right now. Maybe that changes when like the athletes come in, and maybe it changes. But as for right now, you can stay relevant for longer. And then also too, for jiu-jitsu, one of the cool things is we have like masters divisions, which I kind of like. It's like, it's nice that like, when you get older and you age out a little bit, we give you more divisions. And I think this is another thing that's different from the culture. In wrestling, like, let's say if you're in high school wrestling, there's varsity and there's JV. Like, that's it, right? And like varsity is really the only thing that matters. And you wrestle for your spot. Like you have to fight for that spot to get there. And when you get to college, like there's a spot. When you get to, like higher than that, I mean, there's a spot. I mean, you have opportunities to wrestle in like some different like events and things like that, but it's not to the same degree of jiu-jitsu where, you go to any competition, they've got masters divisions, we've got belt levels. We have, if it's not belt levels and in Nogi, it's experience levels, and we can match people up and give them more opportunities to compete. Because, like, for instance, I remember my first year wrestling, I was like, every now and then I'd end up against a senior who had been like wrestling for 4 years, or I'd go against some guy who'd been wrestling since he was a kid, and I've been wrestling for a year, and it is what it is. But in jiu-jitsu, it's like, oh, then all the guys that have been going for about a year and a half, whatever, you guys go over here. Guys for like 2 to 5 years are over here. Guys that have been training for 6+ years, you guys go over there. So I like that ability to be able to compete in multiple places. And going back to your thing about cardio, you can't even you can't touch wrestling without good cardio, because you have very limited ways to win. You either have to take you down and score, or I've got to pin you. And like you said, the better you are, the less pinning happens. Whereas jiu-jitsu, you have so many other options to win. Like you could have basically look at any joint on my body. If you get really good at attacking that joint, that's a way to win. You know, you can win by points, but obviously you can get submissions. And you see tons of matches where guys that are outsized and out strength and athletically get a submission. You look at Lachlan, that's a famous example where you know he goes against Muhammad, he goes against Keenan, and he beats them both with a really quick leg lock. You know, and again, those are guys where if those dudes were wrestling, like if they were the same size, but they were like wrestling and they were like trained wrestlers. I mean, like Lachlan's not even seeing that. You know, now he has good cardio and stuff like that, but again, that goes back to a size difference. So I think jiu-jitsu.
What's kind of funny is that, you know, modern wrestling, scholastic, and is based on catch wrestling. So a lot of the stuff that jiu-jitsu people do, you know, catch wrestlers there's still catch wrestling out there, but with the catch wrestling, they could do like more ground stuff and more, you know, there were leg locks, there were different holds and stuff. So it was more equal when you had like the joint ability to attack the joints and stuff like that. And then later on, the focus became more on just takedowns. So that's kind of when the split between and wrestling had happened, where they couldn't have like the small people going with the big people. Once it was just purely based on takedowns and control, it was harder to have a mix of people, different weights and sizes going together. But back in the day, if you study catch wrestling, you know, you could have more of a mismatch. And that you used to have like these tournaments and carnivals, you know, and so you would have the catch wrestlers fighting the jiu-jitsu, aka the judoka, you know, like Mitsuyo Maeda and the students of Jigoro Kano when they went to America and they were traveling South America and landed in Brazil eventually. So I mean, there's so many moves, you know. Jiu-jitsu, wrestling have been intertwined for, you know, several over a century, you know. So it's pretty interesting, you know. The wrestling now was not the wrestling of even 50, 60 years ago, 100 years ago. So that's pretty interesting. Little history lesson for you guys.
Has a lot of different options, and that's why, you know, sometimes maybe the cardio isn't as necessary because the game allows for more options. So here's a couple that I sort of took when I came into jiu-jitsu from wrestling. So in wrestling, like there's definitely always a pursuit of like techniques and everything else, but there was more of a focus of like learning how to use a technique and mastering a technique than there was like just this novelty of learning a bunch of stuff. I don't know if it's changed since I was in high school and whatever, but you know, everybody was learning stuff, but it wasn't like this big thing like it is in jiu-jitsu, where in jiu-jitsu, you got guys that are just all over the place with techniques, and they get overwhelmed by techniques because they're trying to learn too much. Whereas in wrestling, I remember like my wrestling coach, he was telling us like, look, the only thing you need to win wrestling matches is to be good at 3 moves: a takedown, a reversal, or like an escape, and a pinning combination. If you can do 3 things better than people can stop, you win matches. And I took that philosophy to jiu-jitsu.
So that works in wrestling because they're trying to get you up and ready to compete. It reminds me a lot of TLI. You know, some of the guys would have simple game plans, but that's just to get people, you know, ready to compete as soon as possible. And then once they have a simple game plan, you start working the conditioning, and then you can have a person doing really well at the beginner and intermediate levels. You know, you're trying to get people ready to compete and win matches. Of course, you can't teach them a lot of techniques. You got to get them the core moves. You're going to be drilling that until they, you know, their nose is bleeding, ears are bleeding from just boredom of doing the same moves. And then, you know, condition. So that's kind of the approach in America. I think in other countries, Japan and Europe, you know, you have to start those sports young because they have a development system. You know, you have to, like in Japan, you learn gymnastics. You're learning how to flip, how to roll, backflip, in addition to learning like the basic wrestling techniques. And that's just to prepare their bodies for the movements that they're going to use later on. But in America, you know, maybe you start wrestling in middle school or high school, and, you know, your body's already developed. It's developing. So some of the movements you're not going to be ready for. You got Chew Jitsu over here fighting 4-year senior, and with a year of experience. So of course he's not going to have a lot of tools. You're gonna have one, two tools. That's it. You got. But in other countries, they prepare you. You know, you ain't going out there. You ain't going out there until you got a arsenal of weapons. Arsenal of weapons, and you drilled your moves a million times, and you're a killer by the time you're competing at the same age he started.
Very early, because when I came in, it was like, all right, I found my submission, which was a Kimura, which was my best one, and then it was like, all right, I have my takedown in the gi, takedown and no gi, and then it was like, finding like one little thing that I could do from each position, and just got really good at those things instead of trying to learn everything. And I did pretty well at competitions. Now there's a period where I had to expand my game and everything else, but I think for a lot of people coming into jiu-jitsu especially, you would be wise to not worry about everything. And like you search, you try stuff out, and you figure out what works for you. And if you find something, you hammer that home and get really, really good at it. So with like wrestling, has it changed where like, is there like this big like, with social media and everything being the way that it is, where there's like tons of novelty, or is it more of still like a sort of an ethos of like become like master like your game and become really good with your game, that kind of thing?
Obviously, it depends on the individual.
Yeah.
But I would say still, it's more conceptual. It's more like, all right, and again, this is just generalizing because everyone's different, but there's a lot of hand fighting, a lot of play wrestling, a lot of flow wrestling, and a lot less like drilling, and a lot less focus on like very specific nuanced details and technique. Now, this isn't saying that you're not in like the practice room doing one-on-ones with the coach and trying to fix your low single. You do that. At least when I was in college, we did that. But the base practice, meaning let's say you practice 7 times a week, 2 of those were one-on-ones, 5 of those were with the team. 90% of the time, the team practices would be call-outs. So what a call-out is would be like, all right, guys, I want you to do your favorite 1-2, which would be like, you're not really worried about technique. I mean, you're being technical, right? But you're like, okay.
So he's talking about collegiate wrestling. When you are a collegiate wrestler, I'm speaking from knowing collegiate wrestlers and coaches. They brought you to the school. They recruited you to the school. They're assuming you already got the technique. If you're wrestling collegiately, you already have the technique, and they're just going to refine you, and they're going to focus more on the mental and get your physical ready. And again, because they're so focused on competition, they're trying to win dual meets. You're trying to win NCAAs. You're trying to win whatever tournaments you're doing. They don't have time to be showing you how to finish a single leg, how to finish a double leg. That's not their job. Their job is to get you ready to perform at the highest level. It's like, someone going to the NFL. I'm thinking of what's my guy, Gable Stevenson. You're trying to go to a professional NFL team, and they got to show you how to block and how to catch and how to run. Man, they don't have time. They got so much money on the line, and same thing in wrestling. There's a lot of money. That NIL, especially now, they ain't got time to waste on you. You can't wrestle. You're not ready to win matches. All right, we're gonna bring this other guy in. We're paying him $1 million, $5 million. We're bringing this other kid in. They're paying you $5 million. You better know what you're doing. They expect you to win. You think you're gonna get $5 million and just have fun and play around? No, you're supposed to win matches. They want you to beat Penn State. I'm getting serious about that, guys.
She was like, take high seat, a sweep single. You're not like, every day you're not thinking about the intricacy of the angle of your sweep single. You know what I mean? You're like, is my head up? Are my hips in?
That's kind of like the with jiu-jitsu.
They gonna cut your scholarship. You don't know what to do.
Pseudo
get out of here.
Thing
you mess up that sweep single. Get out of here.
That's the difference.
Go in that portal.
Wrestling is still very technical, but jiu-jitsu sometimes I think is over academic.
I agree.
And so again, I can only speak about my experience. 90% of the time, it was.
Yo, he said over academic, bro. Jiu-jitsu people want to sound smart. They don't be saying nothing, but they using the biggest words. They be using Japanese words. Or like, let me get this dictionary, bro. I got a dictionary, but I got the thesaurus right here. Let me pull that thesaurus out, guys. Let's see what he used that word wrong. Jiu-jitsu people they want to sound smart, and when they're not smart.
Call out drills, like lots of stuff where we're trying to play around and hand fight hard into shots. So yes, we would still work on technique, and if Coach Ruff saw us being like really bad at something, he'd be like, all right, guys, I see a lot of you have a bad habit of keeping your butt back when you shoot your single. Like, let's do this drill again. Partner, you're giving like a little bit of resistance, whatever it is, 20-30%. But you're man A, you're still hand fighting. You're the one hand fighting into the sweep single. Just when you guys are doing this, like, make this little adjustment. But it's less of the, all right, guys. Like, when I teach seminars, I have to teach it like jiu-jitsu people want it to be taught, right? I have to be like, all right, guys, he touches me here, and then I pull here, and then I put my hand here, and then I'm here. Whereas, like, in wrestling, that doesn't really happen, especially at a higher level in wrestling. Whereas in jiu-jitsu, even at a higher level, I think because there's, I don't know what it is. I think that there seems to be more techniques, and there's so much more to cover. Maybe that's just, I don't know. I don't like to use the word optimal because I don't know what that actually means. Yeah, but
okay.
I think
at least you owned
it's more normal.
Okay.
I'll say that. It's more like
it's the cultural norm.
You could, I could see, I'm not saying it's optimal, but I can see why in jiu-jitsu there's more of an emphasis on the academic expression of technique. I'm not saying it's right or wrong.
Need every detail.
It's what I see.
Well, sometimes I think so. Like sometimes it's fine if they want to explain, like, hey, if I push here, whatever. Where people lose me is where they start speaking in, like, so for instance, like Eugene is an example, my physical therapist. That dude will start talking about the shoulder, and he can start talking about this convex and concave, and use all these different terms that like nobody actually uses.
Not real English.
Well, it's like he's using, like, it's basically if you were talking to someone who's like an expert in a field, they have their own jargon that they know, right? And so you can get people that will like use like academic jargon that none of us, that no one speaks with. You know, they'll be like talking about like, well, if this person's moving in the transverse plane, and I'm like, what? Like you mean moving like side to side and forward and back? Like,
are you like Japanese?
Or well, using but not full Japanese, just a little bit of Japanese.
The head senkaku.
Yeah. Like I still call it the arm triangle choke. I'm not gonna call it the what is it what is it called?
I don't even know.
I forgot. Like,
I know armbar is juji.
Juji Katami, yeah. Well, I remember Juji because I trained with a Japanese or a English judoka who like he like they play in judo. They call all the Japanese names, but so he called Juji, like because he's really good at arm bars. Him with Neil Adams.
And again, I'm not saying it's.
I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying it's like
it's interesting. It's a phenomenon.
Yeah, it's bad. It's terrible,
right? Like
half of wrestling is head up, hips in.
Yeah.
That's half of, for most positions. It's like it's very simple.
Here's one that like obviously everybody knows this one, but this was one where I never had a problem with it, and I feel bad for people that do, which is the obsession with belt and rank. So like when I got into jiu-jitsu, I had wrestled, and so like I sort of learned that what matters is, am I getting better? Am I able to hit techniques on people? Do I feel smoother with things? Am I lasting through all the rounds? Like all the things that I happen in wrestling, right? Like those, I came in as a fat kid to wrestling, and then all of a sudden I got in better shape. I could do all the rounds. I could do all the exercises. Good, I'm making progress. Then I started winning wrestling matches, or I was able to, get a takedown in practice. I was doing better. So it's the same thing there, whereas in jiu-jitsu.
So he's making a great point. So I'm going back to that Reddit post. White belt, I'm not improving. I'm not going to get my blue belt in 2 years. And he's over here talking about wrestling. There's no belts. They're just focusing on improving. While the other guy over here is focused on belts. He's focused on, getting his butt kicked left and right. Ain't heard nothing about what he's been doing to improve. It's all about what's going wrong. He can't get promoted. And just like everything else was the problem. And I think he was the problem. But let's let Chew cook.
People come in and they get obsessed with like the belt ranks.
It's so bad.
And I feel bad, because like sometimes it's like, it's a thing. I think the belt has like a useful purpose as far as dividing people up in competitions, because otherwise, if you're a white belt coming in, you might go against him, right? Good luck. That's not, you've been training, you're like off the couch in the gym, you've been training for 5 months, and then you end up against this monster, you're like, you're done. Whereas, okay, we can find a spot for you here in these beginner divisions where you'll actually be able to compete and have some fun. But I do think that the rub is that sometimes people get really obsessed with like that external validation. And I think the thing that that wrestling gave me was like internally, like me focusing on like what I'm doing, and then the belts just sort of come as they will.
Right. Like in my opinion, imposter syndrome wasn't like a big deal in wrestling. Whereas like in jiu-jitsu,
can't be an imposter in wrestling.
There's always this weird thing where you're like, well, I'm a black belt, but this purple belt beats me up, and I shouldn't be a black belt because of this, even though we know that's not how it works.
Right.
But there's also like the weird thing in jiu-jitsu where it's like, well, in my experience, and it's me, picks the other guys, you're like, why is this guy, obviously I'm a brown belt now, but like being a purple belt, being a blue belt, and I'm sure it's still going to happen even at brown belt,
Sandbagger.
So it's like in jiu-jitsu, there's this like weird thing with the belts where it's like either you feel like you're not good enough, or you're like because someone else is better than you that they should be a higher rank. Where in the reality, everyone has their own journey, and there's a reason certain coaches give you a belt. So it's like you for one, you shouldn't feel imposter syndrome when you get your belt. For two, you also shouldn't try to compare yourself.
Some of you guys should feel like you're imposters because you're imposters out there. I ain't naming names, but some of you don't deserve that belt.
Someone else who's the same belt level as you has a completely different journey. And I found like the biggest annoying
ready
thing,
for you.
The most annoying thing for me in jiu-jitsu is like
usually they're on Reddit too.
That consistent comparison
if you're on Reddit
because of the belts.
You don't deserve your belt.
In reality, we know the belt is nothing more than what ties you gi up, and it's a great way to express your journey.
Yeah.
But it's your journey. But it can be very toxic sometimes. I think the culture around belts.
It can be.
It can be very beautiful. I love it. I think belts are important. I've talked about this before in videos. I think they're super important. It's like at the end of the year of school, you get a progress report. Like it makes you happy to see that you went from a B to an A.
Right.
That's awesome. So I think that's what a belt is. Where it gets toxic is where we all get our progress reports and we start judging each other because this person got one progress report in like this grade and this one got this, and now we're like, oh, I'm better than you because I had this grade, or you don't deserve that grade, or you're an 8th grader. Why are you? What do you know?
Or you're sitting around like while you're learning stuff and you're really enjoying the subject that you're learning. You're like, man, this is so cool. I'm learning all this information. Yeah. But then you're getting really upset because you haven't got your progress report yet. Like, it's like if you're enjoying
progress report?
If you're enjoying it, enjoy it. Be all in.
Because it's gonna happen. You're gonna get your I don't know, but at
don't
one
say,
point,
look,
if you
could say
keep
it.
doing jiu-jitsu, you're gonna get a black belt, and then it's like, what are you gonna obsess over after you get that?
Well, and that's the idea. So there's are you familiar with like the myth of Sisyphus?
Yeah, where you push the rock up and then it falls down, right?
Yeah.
The black belt would be like the great example, right?
Well, every belt
should be
every belt. Because
like
why do people? So the idea, if you guys aren't familiar, is it's a Greek myth where Sisyphus was a deceptive king and he pushes this rock up. He was basically doomed by the gods to have to push a rock up a hill and it would roll back down at the end, and you have to do it over and over again for eternity. Albert Camus wrote a book about it, and essentially the idea is in the book he says that we have to imagine, because he said that essentially like our lives are analogous to that, because no matter what we do, we're always going to want to do more. We're always going to want to like continue to climb the ladder, no matter like what you get. You get a blue belt and you get to the top. What do you want? You want a purple belt. You win a competition. What do you want to do? You want to win another one. You submit one person. What do you want to do? You want to submit another. There's never going to be enough. And so Albert Camus said that we have to imagine that Sisyphus is, that there's joy. There's joy in pushing the boulder up. There's joy in the moments. And so I think for a lot of people, like, in wrestling, I remember finding joy in the day-to-day training with the guys, camaraderie, the just battling out. And then, you have to find the same thing in jiu-jitsu instead of being worried about the progress support, the belt, whatever. And then also going back to the imposter syndrome in wrestling, because there are no ranks, if you got your varsity spot, you had to wrestle off for it.
You earned it.
If you won a competition, you had to. If you're a champion, you had to win that. And so you had to go out and do stuff. And so you don't really get the imposter syndrome because we don't have the ranks and things like that. And whatever you got, you had to fight for.
Yeah.
But again, in jiu-jitsu, the belts are cool. You just have to make sure that you think them as like they're the mile marker. You see them and they come and they go and they pass.
Yeah, you should be proud of them, but
that's it.
But it's not your identity.
That's right. So guys, those are a few ideas on wrestling versus.
Awesome. Like I said, I think wrestling culture is better. End of video. Back to Reddit. We got I was answering some comments on got some trolls everywhere. Is the gi essential? I trained at an exclusively no-gi gym for the first 5 years of grappling. Then I moved houses and started a new gym. When I asked about attending some gi classes, the owner gave me a fresh white belt. He said that despite my experience, skill, and competition success in no-gi, I wasn't ready for a blue belt as I lacked knowledge fundamental to BJJ. Oh, I put aside my ego, stayed, trained, and now I'm a purple belt who prefers the gi. Wow. With hindsight, I now agree with his assessment that the gi is BJJ. What do you think? Can you become a black belt in BJJ without wearing the gi? So, Tim Planet has their, I was thinking about this because Tim Planet, I'm coming for Tim Planet now. They have a black belt. They give a black belt, a physical black belt to their black belts in no-gi. But I was thinking, can you really get that belt if you don't even know how to use that belt? Like, you can't even use that belt in no-gi, right? You can't grab the belt. You don't know how to manipulate the belt. So it's almost it's almost funny in that way. And I was about to get pissed off, but I read the rest of this. But let's read some comments before I get. I really want to get Jeff on here, guys. You guys want to see Jeff? Because I know Jeff would be getting upset. Let's see. You can be a black belt with gaps. I mean, you can, but it's not fun. Getting caught in a loop choke by a blue belt is pretty embarrassing, but it's not like it's going to take more than a year to adjust. I don't think demoting people is the way to go. Well, the guy didn't have a rank in gi anyway. Just don't promote them until they meet your standards for the next belt. Let's see. Blue to blue. I don't know what that says. Something blue to black to white after 5 years. Okay, blue to black. I don't know. Was he a black belt? Well, he only did no-gi for 5 years, so he could be a 5-year white belt. Blue back to white. So blue back to white belt after 5 years is a little crazy, in my opinion. Owners have a certain territorialness over promotions and accepting a non-white rank into their school, but I agree with you. Hold them back till they meet your standards, but don't ever question their rank if they got it from an actual BJJ school, especially with blue. That's a belt with a ton of not very good players. No harm letting them keeping it. Blue is a beginner belt with extra stripes. I'd say there's almost no reason to demote from blue ever, but it seemed like he didn't have a belt, so he would be a white belt. I mean, you can give yourself a belt, but I mean, when has that ever worked well? When someone gave themselves a belt? Honestly, from what I've heard from black belts, everything until black is really a beginner. Yeah, even black belt, even a new black belt, still a beginner in some ways. This is certainly true for a lot of Japanese martial arts where you get a black belt in under 4 years. I never heard anyone say this about BJJ though. Legit purple and brown belts are most definitely not beginners. The thing is, when you don't have any gi experience and then you go to, so say you only have no gi experience and then you put the gi on, your skill is not going to be the same. You might be good at leg locks or front head locks or leg locks or something. Usually, but man, you just like the skill's not there. Like you're not going to know how to manipulate the gi. I'm going to make a collar grip, sleeve grip, put my daily Hila in. You're going to be like, what's going on? You're going to be just behind. And let's see, if the person ever got promoted because they just do no-gi, it's not a demotion. However, pure no-gi players typically get promoted faster because of their previous grappling experience. That's true. So if you wrestle for 20 years or did judo for 20 years, I'm thinking of like Travis Stevens, he got promoted faster, but he was already a high-level, judoka that knew Newaza. He just didn't focus on Newaza. Show up every day and cook the lower belts to the point where it's embarrassing. Yeah. All right. If you don't have the belt, just go cook people, beat people up until they give you the belt. Learn the techniques he wants you to learn. It works the other way too, worse in my opinion. I did only gi for 10 years until brown belt. When I started no gi, I realized I didn't really know how to grapple. Personally, I think learning to grapple without it, then put it on for fun. But learning with the gi first, even both, is not ideal for hobbyists. I don't really understand that. Pick your fun and stick with it. Belts don't mean anything, and that's coming from a black belt. I'm from the different rule of thought that you should do both, and then maybe specialize. So think about your favorite grapplers. Craig Jones competed in the gi, then went to no gi. Gordon Ryan competed in the gi for a bit, then went to no gi. Basically, every gi competitor that won ADCC. Your John Carlos, your Patos, your Baby Sharks, your Kennedys, your basically everybody else. Everybody from Brazil, gi. Okay, let me take it off. Compete no gi. And it's only, I can't think of a purely no gi from start to finish competitor that won. Cyborg competed in the gi, then went to no-gi. Can you guys let me know in the comments if you know a pure no-gi specialist, never put the gi on, only trained no-gi, and then won? Heck, even Dean Lister, he put the gi on a little bit. I think he mostly did no-gi, though. So maybe that might be one. He trained both. He did sambo. Half gi. He had a half gi on. Yeah. No-gi bros just want to stand out. And, want to just shit on sorry, I'm cursing. They just want to talk crap on the gi. And you don't hear, I'm going to be honest, you don't hear any gi people really talking about no gi people. If anything, they're like, man, those guys are dirty or they're drug addicts or something. That's basically. And some of that does stem from like how the Gracies, a little history lesson. So, at least in jiu-jitsu, the divide between gi and no gi was more of a class system. So in Brazil, you had to be rich to train jiu-jitsu. Kind of still now, you need to be rich unless there's a program for you to train, like Teta Project. But most of the people had money, to afford the gi and for it to get washed and everything. And then the poor people, they couldn't afford a gi, so they did luta livre, which is like more wrestling based. It's like more not sambo, but more like catch wrestling based. And then the catch wrestlers would fight the jiu-jitsu guys, and then the catch wrestlers did leg locks. The Gracies and the gi people hated that, and then that's why people in the gi didn't like leg locks for forever. Yeah, Reddit, bro. I'd be getting pissed off reading Reddit posts, man. Yeah, I always tell new people when they ask which is better, do whatever gets you excited to come back and train. That is important. Whatever you enjoy, do it. And I don't want to hear you complaining. I don't want to hear you complaining, oh, I don't have rank in the gi. I don't want to hear you complaining, oh, but we never worked leg locks in the gi or, stuff like that. I don't want to hear complaints. I just want you to enjoy the sports. Not in my experience. I never trained no-gi and jumped into a comp with a few weeks of no-gi training at purple belt and medaled, only losing the finals by an advantage. I beat guys who trained no-gi while I mainly trained gi. Guess it depends on your style. If you played a lot of lapel or spider guard, the adjustments will be difficult. Yeah, it can be difficult, but the fact that you can play with different grips means that once you figure out the grips in no-gi, once you figure out the grips in no-gi, you'll be okay. Let's see. Very good point. I don't play any lapel guards, and the biggest adjustment I had to make when I started no-gi was the pace. Yeah, so maybe your cardio is going to be different. You don't have the fabric. You don't have the gi giving you friction to slow the game down. It's going to be quicker. I rarely do gi as my schedule for work lines up with no gi classes. Every time I do make out to a gi class, the pace seems so much slower, although my gym was mostly high blues and up, so maybe that's just take it easy on me, let me work a bit before crushing me. That's possible. We talked earlier about people going easy. He's a white belt. People going easy on the white belts. The black belt that I kind of don't like, he says, yeah, I get that. I used to do no-gi comps. I used to do no-gi and comps just for more matches and would do better in those. I just didn't realize I liked no-gi more. I was gi brainwashed. Yeah, I don't like this guy. If you got issues with me, come at me online. I'll combat you with my jiu-jitsu, word jiu-jitsu. Yeah, statistically, I probably did better in no-gi than gi, even though I trained gi way more. There was also guys that would kill me in the gi, but we were close in no gi. I think it just comes down to styles. I think my gi game is very transferable to no gi. I'm also like this. My game feels more smooth in no gi due to less friction. It's not even the grips that bother me. It's the heavy, sweat-soaked coat and pants that get in the way of my triangle setups and slip out the back takes. Oh yeah. I had the opposite experience and opinions. It was far easier to go from gi to no gi than other way around. I think that's for most people, especially high-level people. You're going to see high-level guys can go from gi to no gi, but I don't think there's ever been a high-level no gi person that did well in the gi. Because once you're behind in the gi game, you're not going to have a chance to come back. Because you were like, I hate all the grips. I'm tired of the slow. It's so slow, blah, blah, blah. But then they can't go back. They're stuck in no-gi. I don't know why you would limit yourself, You should do everything, especially if you're a coach or a competitor. You should be ready for everything. And I always say whatever you're wearing affects your jiu-jitsu. I mean, that speaks about your jiu-jitsu, right? Oh, man, I can't grapple. I got pants on, man. Wait, let me take my pants off. I'll be ready. I'll only train no-gi, bro. Imagine that. I gotta take my pants off. It's okay. I got spats underneath. Yo, Reddit people, come for me. We got another video. Says Nicky Ryan reveals the true extent of injured knee. So I'm going to change my face on this one. Not my face, but my head. So it's, let's see. How can I move this guy? Let's see. Oh. Does that work? It doesn't really work that well. I tried this before and messed it up. And somebody was complaining like, Alec, you messed the video up. Well, first off, I was traveling, and second off, I didn't know what I was doing. So let's see. We got the video. I think we're just gonna play one segment. It's on the B Team YouTube channel. Hopefully, please don't hit me with a copyright strike. I'm just doing a reaction to your video. Let's see, get this larger. Yeah, there we go. And I don't know how to adjust it, guys. There's no way for me to adjust this guy. Yeah, there's just no way for me to adjust it. I just got to move my head out the way. All right, let's go, Nicky Ryan.
You got like 1 more week left, right? Till you get surgery?
Yeah, exactly, 1 week. Got my pre-op tomorrow. Turns out I also have a torn meniscus and not just the torn ACL. It's actually funny, the surgeon didn't even tell me when I saw him about the meniscus, and then the surgical place called me yesterday to confirm everything. They're like, yeah, you're scheduled for both ACL reconstruction and meniscus repair. So I've had torn ACL and torn meniscus. My surgeons, I'm pretty sure his exact words were, I don't know how you've been functioning for this long. He saw the MRI and then did the ACL test, and he's like, I don't know how you've been functioning for this long.
People say you're lazy, but you don't have any knees.
Yeah, I know it. Imagine, let's see you guys all calling me lazy trying to train for 3 years with a torn meniscus and ACL.
The hate in his heart, dude. He convinces me.
So that's pretty bad. I need to get Clinton, my guy Clinton, on here. DPT, Doctor of Physical Therapy, or maybe Jer. You guys can kind of weigh in on the comments or something. But that meniscus is usually not bad. They can usually go in, scope that thing, trim it up, tie it up, whatever they got to do. ACL repair, that might take a while. They can do cadaver, they can repair it, depending on how bad or good it is. But the recovery time it's gonna be months of recovery. Physical therapy. I also think he's torn. I'm not sure if he tore this ligament or the other ligament on the knee. I think he's torn this before, or it's a new injury. So, not the best thing to hear as a young athlete, young professional athlete in a sport where you attack the legs and those joints in particular. So that's pretty sad news to hear. I don't want to give him advice. He needs to talk to professionals about his next steps, if he's going to keep competing or if he's going to transition into a coaching role. And it kind of reminds me of Danaher's situation where, his hips were really bad. And so, he had to go less rolling and just more instruction. So sad to see a really good athlete. People really like Nicky Ryan. So it's kind of sad to see, this kind of thing happen. Sometimes it's also genetic, genetically, maybe those ligaments just weren't as strong, or, maybe environmental causes, rolling with so many high-level people from such a young age, caused him to get more injured. So guys, take care of yourselves. Think about longevity. I know, especially B Team, a lot of those guys are young, hungry, want to prove themselves, crazy. So sometimes you can be reckless with your body. So learn from this. Learn from Nicky Ryan. Learn from other athletes. Take care of yourselves. And, you're going to have a life outside of competing. And you want to be healthy. And I always think of the Meow Bros, they've jacked their bodies up. So to see them in the next 5-10 years, it's not going to be pretty, guys. Heard it from me. Heard it from me first. Okay. So we'll move on. We can see everything over here.
You can buy a PC when we play with me.
This guy literally comes up with any excuse. This guy got a better PC than me. He bought a PC to play ranked Marvel Rivals and has been on 2 times in the fucking past.
Nicky said he's gonna be okay. He's gonna be gaming. He's gonna be gaming regardless. So now we got another post. I'm not sponsored by this company, but I thought it was interesting because I see a lot of people wearing their their braces. Anaconda knee brace equals trash. Again, I'm not saying this. You guys can see I'm reading a Reddit post. Against my better judgment, I bought these Anaconda knee braces off an Instagram ad. Yo, they got them. The marketing worked. But my knees are pretty effed up. They were on sale for Black Friday. Quite frankly, my old braces I bought from a pharmacy do a way better job of offering support. Things get loose around the knee no matter how I position the straps. I bought the size they recommended for my chunky legs. They feel snug when I slide them on. Within a few minutes, I can feel the fabric getting bunched up. No compression around the joint. Save your money. A lot of guys here are saying they work great. Legit glad they work for you. It's definitely not a solution for everyone. It's definitely not a miraculous knee pain cure like the ad, like every knee brace ad actually would have you believe. Buyer beware. I mean, man, I can look at that thing and know it wasn't nothing. I forget which one I have a knee brace too, but it's like it's got the metal, a lot of support. Not Dr. Bronner's, that's the shampoo. Let me check real fast, guys. Can I pause? I don't know if it paused, but give me a second. What is the name of this brand?
Off balances in this 50-50 position.
Uh-oh, guys. We're watching Tainan. So I was recording, but I think I paused it. I messed up. Well, we're watching Tainan versus Andy Murasaki now, guys. I messed up.
Andy chops down with his right leg.
Nice.
Tainan rolls through, maintains
Pretty even match, Pretty even match. Man, I messed up, guys. I paused it. I thought I paused it. And I've been talking this whole time. We missed some sections, guys. I'll have to go back and see what I said and didn't say. So far, sweeping. So Andy, he didn't come on top for very long. That's why he didn't get points.
He's gonna look to bring that right leg out.
And it's hard to hold an AOJ person in 50-50. They basically came up with 50-50.
Hanker with his left hand. Grip right behind the knee.
So I feel Tainan's going to escape at some point, creating a scramble.
And the pants would require a little less
You
energy.
see. A little knee bar right there. A little knee bar. Little knee bar right there.
Center, same position. Along with the drag. 2 minutes, 25 seconds.
Yeah, it's hard to be an AOJ guy. Hard to be an AOJ guy in this position.
Murasaki by 2 points.
You're probably going to try to kick that right leg back.
In the 50-50 position.
Turn to leg drag. Whenever he sees an opening. Or might sit back down or clear the inside hook. See that left hook that Murasaki has. Might try to clear that somehow. Murasaki's going for knee bar.
Gets an advantage for it. Now this puts Andy in quite an interesting position, Danny. We saw this earlier. This position used to potentially sweep in our Roosterweight final.
So really close. I mean, Andy's just got to come up to win. Tainan,
could he get up?
It's Tainan.
Holding that right leg. Both legs controlled by Andy Murasaki.
So he kind of gave up his ankle.
Trying
Yeah.
to wrap up an ankle lock.
So now he needs to go. Now it's time to go. You got to go, Andy. You got to go. Got to go.
1 minute left. Tainan Dalpro leading Andy Murasaki
So
by 2
Tainan
points.
just had to hold, And then Murasaki is pretty much forced to come up into a weird position.
Andy
Put back down.
Tainan puts him back down on the mat.
And then he let him pull.
Now this is where
So that was it. That was the whole match right there. That was the whole match.
Stacking Tainan.
That was the whole match.
Tainan doing such a good job recovering good leg positioning.
So the strategy, he let Tainan escape and pull. So that there was no way to score the points. He probably should have either gotten that takedown, not got Uchimata, or re-pulled, and then look for another sweep or takedown attempt.
Consistently.
So very close
Entire man
match.
caves dedicated to retro games. A 30.
So very close match. It just strategy. The strategy that all the no-gi guys hate is why the gi guys can come in and beat the no-gi guys because they're so used to strategy. The matches are 2-3 different exchanges that can impact the whole match. In the gi, 1, 2, 3 little mistakes. One mistake, that's all it takes to mess up the whole match. In no-gi, because you can scramble, you can rely on your attributes, your conditioning, your strength. You get away with a lot. But in the gi, it's so close. The skill is so close. The match wasn't decided till the very end. No-gi, usually it's either it's a stalemate or one person's clearly dominating. It's very rarely just coming down to small little movements and gripping and placements and decisions. I feel like in the gi, those decisions, it's like, oh man, your decisions matter so much more because you're not going to be able to come back in time. So yeah, man, I missed a lot of stuff. I've been talking, man. Didn't record half the stuff I talked about. I jacked up, man. Bring myself back. Yeah, I don't know if it was recording, guys. I think I screwed up. We'll keep going. So, where that came from. Last video, we got to finish with some business. I've been talking for, I don't know how long this video is because I paused it. I thought I unpaused it. So it says what you should know before starting a jiu-jitsu gym. So,
Welcome back to Lil Jitsu. Merry late
I thought that was
Christmas. I hope you
Nicky
all
Ryan
have
for a second.
Wonderful Christmas
that was
Day,
him.
Christmas Eve, whatever you guys celebrate. Happy early New Year's. Today I'm going to talk to you about something that I have only come to discover recently in my jiu-jitsu journey, and that is the good, the bad, and the ugly of running a jiu-jitsu gym. Many of you know that I started a gym as a pretty much brand new purple belt. I partnered with my coach in starting it, and now I'm the sole owner. And it's been 3 years, approximately, almost 4 years that I've had the gym and I've been running it. Started the gym April of 2018, and it is now almost 2022. So I kind of wanted to talk to you if you're considering running a gym or you wonder what's going into it. If you're curious about the purple belt experience of opening a gym, I'll go over that later. But, I could assume that this kind of applies to any fitness or martial arts gym. But I run a jiu-jitsu gym, so that's the experience that I'm talking about. If you guys find this content useful, beneficial, eye-opening, entertaining in any way, hit the like button for my sake, for the
like button, guys.
Subscribe that they post. I would also love to interact with you on it. Get into it. Just to start things off on a positive note, we'll start with the good parts of running a jiu-jitsu gym.
There's good parts?
Number one, one of the most satisfying or rewarding parts of running a jiu-jitsu gym is the visible progress that occurs when you're coaching your students. You see people progress in fitness, in jiu-jitsu skill, in confidence, and it is extremely satisfying. Number two is training with your friends every night. The hope is that you're developing a culture where you actually enjoy
just don't
spending
make it a
time
cult,
with your
guys.
students.
That's all I say. All I ask.
For me, I really like the students that I coach, and I like hanging out with them at jiu-jitsu as well as outside of jiu-jitsu. Many of them have become my close friends, so that is definitely a positive of running a jiu-jitsu gym. Number three, you get to generate income doing something that I'm assuming that you enjoy. I'm assuming that you started or are wanting to start a jiu-jitsu gym because you enjoy jiu-jitsu. The idea and the goal is that you make money doing something you love, so that's definitely one of the positives of running a jiu-jitsu gym. Number four, kind of along the financial ends of things, you can write off for taxes certain jiu-jitsu related expenses as a business expense, such as jiu-jitsu competitions, jiu-jitsu trips. You can look at writing off seminars. Anything like that is something that, if you didn't have
within
a gym,
reason,
you might
guys.
consider doing anyways. But
don't do nothing
because
illegal.
you have a gym, it's an expense related to growing your business, and you can usually check with your accountant, write these off in some fashion. Number five good thing about running a jiu-jitsu gym is it helps you continue your self-improvement. It's a motivator in your life to continue to improve your jiu-jitsu skills, to continue to improve your diet, your health, your fitness, your overall knowledge, and your professionalism as well. And that wraps up the good parts. I'm sure there are more maybe I didn't think of. Comment those below. Same things with the bad and the ugly when I get to there.
Oh, dang.
Throw
You said
some
bad
comments
and
down. I wanna
ugly?
hear what you guys got to say. And now, without further ado, we're going to go ahead and jump into the bad parts of running a jiu-jitsu gym. I haven't prioritized these in any specific way, but the first one that I'm going to list here is it's a slow building process. I'm assuming that you don't have
really
other
bad,
partners, that you're doing this on your own, and that you are
just normal
in a, let's say, a smaller target market, okay? It's a slow building process. Sometimes you're going to have classes with one person. Sometimes you're going to have classes with no people, especially starting out. And corresponding to that, it took me 3 years to make a profit. Granted, I was going through COVID, but still, it takes a long time to see
He's playing
money,
hard mode
so you're
during
basically
COVID.
working for free. Number 2, and this is kind of counterintuitive, you actually don't get to train as much. When you're an owner of a gym or you're a coach, your priority should switch from getting better yourself to developing your students and helping them improve.
It should
their
change,
jiu-jitsu.
but
That's
doesn't
how you
always
create a
change.
good product. When it comes to a jiu-jitsu gym, you have to make sure that your students are learning, and obviously you can't negate or completely forget about your progress, but your priority, instead of going to a class and training just to get better for yourself, you're going to a class with the express purpose of making your students better. You'll show the technique, and then you'll help your students make sure they're doing the right things, but you're not going to be drilling the whole time. When it comes to rounds, you should be keeping an eye on people to make sure that there's no injuries, that people are rolling safely, that they're doing the right things. So you actually don't get to train as much when you run a jiu-jitsu gym, usually. Number 3, there's a lack of schedule flexibility. Assuming you're the only coach and you haven't had the time in the gym to develop a number of colored belts yet, you're supposed to be there every single day. Now, you can obviously set your gym schedule, but your gym schedule also determines how you attract new customers. So if you have a class on the schedule, you've got to be there, which means you can't exactly call out sick. You can't exactly go on vacation very easily. You've got to find substitutes, maybe from a sister gym or your old coach, whatever. You've got to do some work to get any time off. Number 4, and this is kind of connected to the lack of flexibility, but it's just a straight up time commitment. As a student at a jiu-jitsu gym, I just go for the adults classes. If I want to leave after fundamentals and skip advanced, I do. I can do whatever I want in that regards because it's my training. But when I'm running a jiu-jitsu gym, I've got a kids class, I've got adults classes, I've got maybe a little kids class, and I've got to be there for every single one. In addition to that, you've got to show up at least 30 minutes in advance of the class starting, and odds are you're probably going to be there at least 30 minutes after the classes end. So it is a big time commitment.
Yeah, I see this a lot. I think, if you're smart as an instructor, the first goal is to get help, and you don't always need a colored belt. It sounds kind of like a racist thing. When we say colored, we mean like belts with color. Anybody but white belt. So you're just trying to get some help. You can get your friends to come through, or maybe you can get some higher belts somewhere somehow. But your first goal should be to get that help. Get a blue belt, purple belt. At Iron Horse we got Dustin and Jer. Those guys can kind of help Tony, cover classes. If he's got to go out of town, he's got them kind of, holding his back. But before they were there, Tony would be every class burnt out. I mean, he's still burnt out, but it was a lot worse. But now he has those guys, so he can feel confident and comfortable in leaving the gym for a weekend or a week or so, So as a coach, some coaches are very like, I gotta control everything. But if you're a smart coach, you trying to get as much help as possible as soon as possible. That should be your priority. Okay, make profit. Number 1. 2. When I say make profit, get to a point where you cover your bills and pay yourself. Number 2 should be to get help. You're going to be the bottleneck. If you're the only person that can teach the classes, everybody's coming through you, you're limited by yourself. So once you can start adding, people that you trust and respect to support you, that's when your school can grow. Going back to what Keenan said, you don't it's different if you're the main person, but it works really good if you have other people that can go into those classes and they can follow your curriculum, or they can improv, they can ad lib, a class, and that just helps you grow so much. There's going to be you want there to be other instructors that people like and can relate to. They want to go to those classes. And man, it helps so much. You know, so many of you guys try to do everything by yourself, and you be stressed out, which is kind of the opposite of why you went into this business, right? You did it because you enjoyed it, but now you're stressed out. You hate teaching now, so you gotta take care of yourself. You know, if you're the business owner, you're the head instructor, take care of yourself. I talked about students wanting to enjoy the academy, but the instructor also needs to enjoy the academy. They have to, oh man, I can't wait to go to the gym today. I can't wait to show this technique or work on this thing. You know, you want to be happy. You know, remember the last video, the guy's like, oh, he's drinking a ton of coffee. He's drinking coffee by the gallon. He's the leader. He's in the UK, so he's drinking by the liter. He looked like he was not enjoying himself. I mean, you're not going to enjoy every day, but man, most days you need to be happy, ready to go to your academy.
If you're working in addition to that just to supplement your income while you're growing, it's going to be a rough grind. You're going to be there a lot, and you're going to be working 50, 60, 70 hours a week pretty much unavoidably until you're turning a big enough profit to quit your other job. One other thing I forgot to mention when it comes to time commitment is you also have to clean the gym. Cleaning is a requirement.
Clean your gym.
In a jiu-jitsu gym where
clean that gym.
You know, the enemy. You've got to be there. You got to make sure everything is clean and looks good for your customers. So that's another big piece of the time commitment when you're running a jiu-jitsu gym. That wraps things up for the bad part of owning a jiu-jitsu gym. Let's move into the ugly, which I know is what everyone wants to hear about. So when it comes to the ugly parts of running a jiu-jitsu gym, there isn't a lot. You know, the bad parts are there and they're you know, annoying to deal with or whatever. But the ugly parts, they're not that common, but it's just uncomfortable to deal with. The first one of those is difficult conversations, okay? Difficult conversations could be a number of different things. It could be talking to someone who is just a little bit too spazzy and explosive and is rolling dangerously.
Welcome to the business.
It could also be someone who smells bad in the gym. Talking
Welcome
to a
to the
parent
business.
whose kid is acting out in some way, whether they're
Welcome
not
to the
letting go when
business.
someone taps or they're faking injuries or whatever. You know, it's talking to the parents when kids are misbehaving, and it's a pattern.
My kid is
perfect.
My kid, it's you. It's your fault. The kid be interrupting the whole class, be terrorizing everybody. All the other students hate that kid. Parents looking at you like it's your fault. Man, I've been through some stuff.
Preferences in training partners or really not wanting to roll with a certain person. It could be emotional responses to being in jiu-jitsu positions. It could be a number of things, and difficult conversations will come up. No matter what culture you build in your gym, you're going to have difficult conversations in some
People
regard,
trying to steal
and
your
they're not gonna be
students.
fun. They're going to be ugly, potentially. Ooh, how could I forget this part, right? I haven't had the experience of dealing with this yet, thankfully, but as I'm growing, I'm sure it'll happen. When you run a gym, due to the nature of the close contact and the social aspect of things, gym relationships can form pretty easily. And when gym relationships end, that can also create a uncomfortable situation in the gym. That can affect
Somebody got to go.
It can affect your bottom line, and it can affect the experience that people have when they come in to try new classes. So that's something you have to deal with as a coach and owner as well. The second ugly part about running a jiu-jitsu gym is injuries. Now, this isn't like ugly in the idea that you're going to see blood and guts and all that. But
no, you're going to see that.
When you're a gym owner, if someone gets injured, that could mean that they're going to end their membership. That could mean that they will potentially sue you. That hasn't happened to me, thankfully, but it's a possibility and a risk that you take running a jiu-jitsu gym. As the owner, it's your responsibility to make sure that you manage a safe training environment. That doesn't just mean the mats are clean and that there's no like gaping holes and safety precautions being ignored. That also means that you've got to keep an eye on your students and make sure that no one's doing any dangerous techniques. They're not performing the techniques in a dangerous way, for example, too fast or too strong or too heavy. And you've got to make sure that you really control how you teach and how you run rounds and training to make sure that no one gets hurt. I don't want anyone in my gym to get hurt, but injuries happen and you got to manage that in some fashion. It's your responsibility to make sure things are safe. And when injuries do happen, you have to be capable enough to handle those in an appropriate way. It's not a fun situation, but injuries do happen. You've got to be able to manage that accordingly. That wraps things up for the good, the bad, and the ugly of running a...
All right, guys. I keep pushing this business aspect. I mean, not always exciting, but hopefully you guys learned something from it. And you have any suggestions for videos? Had a few comments You know, if you're trolling me, I'm gonna come back for you, bro. Taking the gloves off, coming for you. All right, guys. Till next time. Peace. 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 Peace.